Well, hello, and welcome. Welcome to another episode of the Imperfect Men's Club podcast. My name is Mark Aylward, and I'm here as always with my good friend, colleague, and co-host Jim Gurley. And that was another interesting pregame, Jim. I think I'm just going to keep saying that as long as it remains true because it's pretty remarkable for me. And the other thing that it struck me, and I'm just ad libbing here, but we try to give information and we try and just reflect on things, but neither one of us is proselytizing or pretending that we have any of this shit figured out. And I just kind of want to make people aware that this is supposed to be interesting and perhaps a little insightful, but we're not claiming that we know everything or that we're right about any of this shit. And I think that's I just felt like I should say that. We're trying to figure
Yeah,
it out in public is how it feels.
yeah,
But
yeah. No, appreciate you saying that, Mark. About there's some humility going on here, right? We're not claiming we have all the answers. We what we're sharing is our life lived experiences, and I mean, hopefully some wisdom
yeah, I
that
think
other people can benefit from. But
yeah, and that's a great way of saying it too. I think that what I discover every time we start talking about all this shit is how little I do know and how much I can
mhm.
still learn. So anyway, what we came up with today is, came out of the wheel, and Jim can share that context with you, but it's deep introspection. We want to talk about what that means and how it's impacted our lives and the upside and the downside of it. So, Jim, why don't you toss some context at that, and then we've got five key aspects of deep introspection. So we got the content kind of categorized nicely, framed nicely.
Yeah, absolutely. Like every week, Mark, we've created this framework of these five areas of our life in no particular order: our profession, our relationship with the world, our worldview, our relationship with others, men, women. Talked about that last week. Our relationship with our ourselves, our mental and physical well-being, um, and our relationship with money. And these are always going on in our lives, but it always seems to come back to the center of the life wheel, or the hub of life, the flywheel of life, and that's the center is ourselves. And so the self this week is very relevant, because I think when you experience something, maybe a setback or a disappointment, we talked about betrayal in the pregame. I think it's time. You can be angry at the person, but it's also a time maybe to slow down and think about, why are you having such these strong feelings? Why are these emotions so high? Because there's some telling information in that. If you I use the word self-reflect on those. It's easy to start to blame that on everybody or be mad at the person, and that's the initial reaction. It's almost like the five levels of grief, right? The first one is disbelief, and the second one is anger, and there's the other ones. But there's something to say, like, hey, well, if I'm this emotionally attached to the outcome of this particular issue, whatever it was, that's something it's a telling sign. And then maybe in our younger years, you would just blow it off or act it out and move on. Fuck that person; they're not worth it. But I think it's also some really telling information that we can benefit. So I decided to do what I do a lot now. I think we all do, whether we admit it or not. Is when I have a particular term or word, I'll do a prompt, and this is what it came back with.
Yeah, let me
But
let
what I
me
was also yeah, but yeah, one last thing about it was, it goes back to the self. So I highlighted all the selves: self hyphen, self reflection, self analysis. So that's really what we're going to talk about, and I'll let you kind of kick it off with the definition.
Yeah, we have the definition of deep introspection, and I think that to me, deep introspection is just a deeper dive into self-reflection, and I think that'll bear itself
Hmm.
out here as I read this. But deep introspection is the
Hmm.
process of looking inward to examine your own thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and behaviors. It's a profound form of self-reflection and self-analysis that goes beyond a casual thought about your day. And like I said, it says here are some key aspects of what deep introspection means, and we're going to take them one at a time. There are five of them. The first is self examination. Self examination is a deliberate and focused effort to understand your inner world. This can involve asking yourself
Hmm.
difficult questions like, why did I react that way? Or what are my true motivations? To your point.
Hmm. Yeah, again, there's a lot here, but I think one of the biggest drivers too is these are maybe somebody these are our own insecurities, our own self-worth that if we're not aware of, we're not going to deal with those. So it's just getting clear. That's what I find when you have to examine it. Like I said, it was deliberate focus to understand the inner world. So why is your world processing information that way? Why are those emotions so strong? And then try to see how they maybe applied in other parts of your life, but you didn't take the time to self-reflect.
Well, I think that what we were talking about before, in my experience, my professional experience and my personal experience, I don't think most people do this. I think that it's because when we were doing it in the pregame, I think that the answer to why people don't do that is because it can get pretty dark,
Oh yeah.
and we didn't go dark, but we're you're using words like betrayal and anger and if
Hmm.
you we're all like, and I say this about church all the time, we're all sinners, right? My Catholic
Hmm.
faith, and I think priests would agree. I mean, everybody would agree that's Catholic or even not Catholic that we're all sinners. It's human nature, and when
Yep.
you go into self examination, you're going to come across things that you don't want to hear, and that's
That's right.
probably why people don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're going to also have to take some self-responsibility, and instead of blaming that, uh, look at yourself and say, "Hey, what did I do to cause that situation?" Or what am I projecting or vibrating out to feel that way? And then sometimes, we're completely off, right? We interpreted something one way when it was not even that. So yeah,
Yep.
that's
Yep. Well, it's the sales call that, someone gets mad at you for calling them, and they're not mad at you. There's something else going on in their life that they've not resolved yet, and you
absolutely.
just happen to pick up
Yeah.
the phone and call them. Let's go to number two, understanding and
Hmm.
insight. I guess this is kind of the developmental process. The goal is to gain a
Hmm.
deeper understanding of who you are, what drives you, and how you relate to the world around you. It's about getting to the root
Hmm.
of your feelings and your actions. That's kind of what you were alluding to in your example there. But yeah, and I think
Yeah.
that the other thing that came up with us, Jim, was you talked about a particular event, and we both talked about particular people in our lives that flat out betrayed us, and how
Mhm.
difficult that is to resolve. And in my own case, I can't help but occasionally say, is there anything I could have done differently to have precluded that from happening? And that's a dangerous
Mhm.
game, that to me, that's
Yeah.
the that hindsight's 2020 game, you know?
It's again. I think trust is a huge part of this. You trusted somebody that they wouldn't do this and they did this, or they're putting their self interest above yours, which is kind of interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of if but betrayal and trust is a huge part of that. So you also look at yourself with the hypocrisy. Who am I uh, to judge them for what they want from something, and then that's a sign of narcissism too, right? Why is it always about me? I think you have to be objective. You have to be try to understand their position, or even maybe some of their past histories, why they act the way they do. A little more
Yeah.
compassion, a little more understanding
Yeah.
than just making it all about yourself and your feelings on why you're reacting to it. Try to be a little more objective. And again, this is as much for you, not for them. You're not trying to win the argument. You're trying to understand, why are these emotions so strong, or why am I feeling this way? And,
Yeah, I
and
think
I find that to be very helpful. Yeah.
if you have the luxury of going back in someone's life and understanding how they were
Mhm.
raised and by whom and what they got, what they had and what they
Yep.
didn't have, but we don't have that luxury. We just need to make the assumption that it's probably safe to assume that if this person is doing things that are outside of the kindness of humans, like betrayal or trust or lying, cheating, stealing, all that stuff, you probably can find where that comes from if you were given the opportunity to investigate it. Actually, it's most of the time it's pretty obvious, but we just don't get the
Hmm.
luxury of doing that, you know?
Hmm. Well, you don't get the luxury of doing it because either you didn't approach them right, or you went into to full on blame that they were the cause of it, and they were the liars, they were the cheats, they were the and sometimes that the reality is you're doing the same thing that you're accusing them of. and then
Yeah,
just
but
be,
I think there's a third option. I think the third option is just to walk away because we only have so much time,
oh,
and
no doubt.
you can't be principled about every little thing because when you stand up
Yeah.
for principle, it's either going to cost you time or it's going to cost you money.
Yeah.
Usually, it's going to cost you both, and sometimes it does. I'm not going to expend any more time and energy on that. I'm just going the other way. You know,
Hmm.
sometimes that's the best option. You know, so.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah.
So third is personal growth. So that's a fairly obvious phrase, but let's see what they say. Deep introspection is often a tool for personal growth. By understanding your own
Hmm.
patterns, strengths, and weaknesses, you can work on improving yourself and making better decisions in the future. Yeah, I feel
Hmm.
like about that one, I just feel like to me, that's just like every day I get up, I'm going to do a little bit of that because I want to just be a little better today than I was yesterday. And that I think is, it's a very simplistic way of looking at that. But I think that if we all did that, the world might be a kinder place. But
Hmm.
it's not easy.
Yeah, this is one. Yeah, this one again. I can speak to this with another framework because if there's a repetitive pattern going on in your life, it's fair to say that's not them, that's you, right?
Yeah.
If you're having these same thoughts about other situations or other times in your life, it's time to slow down and say, hey, maybe it's time for me to see where the personal growth. The framework I have, a number of different frameworks I use, but I go back to this one. It's called the five F's, right? Which is the trauma responses, because this is what most people are operating in a trauma state.
Yeah.
It really is a state of mind that you're in, and you never know, to your point earlier, when you're going to hit somebody at what state they're in. So you have
Hmm.
to have some understanding, some perspective. But I think you've heard me talk about this before. There's the five F's, right? It's either you immediately fight, so that's often was was kind of my personality. First thing I did was I would fight like crazy, no matter what the situation was, right? Or you'll flight. That's when you're just, I'm out of here. Fuck you. You're not worth it. I'm leaving. You freeze. That's when you're just like frozen. You can't believe. You're in disbelief. So you're just froze. Or you fawn. And this is interesting. This is where, and that is where um, you're gonna appease. You're going to try to seek approval. You're going to fawn. Or you're just going to flop and just sit there and lay there and do nothing. So those are going on, and those are reactions that we all are. We have some form of those. It's whether or not you're self aware that you're in one of those phases. And,
You know,
and I
it's
and I
what's
so I find that one.
yeah, it's an interesting technique that I learned early in my career, and I taught it to everybody that worked for me that was in a sales capacity, and
Mhm.
it works for a lot of things. And that was, if you're on the phone and someone starts to treat you disrespectfully, and you've given them no
Mhm.
reason to do that, and you have to do something like this, and that is, excuse me, I need to interrupt the conversation. I have to
Mhm.
ask you a question. I have to know from you what I've done or said to make you feel like you could be so disrespectful to me because I don't know what it is and I don't want to repeat it. And it's a very
Mhm.
powerful thing to do because, in my experience, one of two things happens. You either confirm that this person is, in fact, an asshole and you don't want to spend much time with assholes, so finding out early is good. And I find that to be about 10% of those people. The other 90 will apologize because and they'll tell
Mhm.
you it's got nothing to do with you. I'm sorry. I've got this other thing going on and I just let my anger get the best of me. And it's a
Mhm.
very simple but very powerful tool. And it's exactly what we're talking about, what you're talking about, which is something else is going on and we just don't know what it is, you know? So
Yeah, but I think that the context is super important. A sales call is very different than somebody that you have a relationship with or somebody you
sure.
have. And so the five F's is realizing may be in a state. They may be in a state that you're not. Just because you're in one state of fight or flight or whatever it is, they may be in a different phase in that same situation if they care. And then some people you got to realize, like you say, you just got to walk away. They're not worth it.
Yeah.
To our conversation earlier, we only have so many minutes left on the clock, especially at this stage in our life. And now it's time to choose who we're going to spend those with. And
Yeah.
that's not just physical time, but the time of energy, the time of emotion, and are they worth it? Are they worth the ROI, right? What's the return on investment based on their past uh, characteristics, based on their past behaviors? Is this is this person or this thing worthy of my time? And
Yeah, it's an interesting balance
I'm
between,
very clear on that. At least at this stage, I'm very,
yeah,
very selective of who, and then making room, also letting people that maybe occupied that time in your or space in your life that no longer really deserve it or warrant it. And you have to be compassionate with yourself and with them to say, life goes on, right? It's not personal, but
yeah, yeah.
it has to be.
It's a delicate balance between compassion and selfish. I
Sure
mean,
is.
you do have to be a little selfish sometimes to protect your space, and you try and
Hmm.
be as compassionate as you can, but we can't solve the world's problems, and you just have to use this. And that's why this whole
Yeah.
self-reflection thing is not a it's not a switch you flip on and off. It's like you got to do a little bit of this all the time, I think, you know.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
sometimes doing it with somebody else that you can trust, like we're doing right now, is a lot easier and a lot better and more productive than doing it on your own. It's hard to do on
Yeah.
your own. You know?
Yeah.
The number four is soul searching.
Hmm.
The term is often used interchangeably with soul searching or self analysis. It's a form of contemplation that helps you put your mental chaos in order and come to terms with things that have happened in your life. Yeah, that was just described our entire pregame.
You're speaking for yourself, or some personal things. Yeah, I don't want to reveal too much, since this is going out to the world, but I thought it was pretty revealing. Obviously, we have a very good relationship, so I can share a perspective. It's easier for somebody that's not as emotionally attached to the outcomes of these things, right? But there's a pattern often in our lives that repeats itself. It's also a common theme that all humans have is there's a villain in every story, and I think identifying your villain is super important. Otherwise, you're just gonna it's a rerun. Everything you do, you'll project on that situation, and then that you'll find the villain, and that's just how the human brain works. So it's stopping that thought process and become a little more clear on, hey, where am I going with this? Right? Does there have to be a villain in this story? Maybe I'm the villain. Maybe, yeah. So, yeah,
I think
this
I've
the
been,
soul searching on this one too, Mark, is yet another framework that often there's a loss, right? When you have deep emotions, it's some kind of a loss,
mhm.
and then when you have a loss, that it's a sign that you're not living in the present. It's the fear of the future, maybe in relationship to the past experience. So it's if whatever it is, it could be a thing, it could be a person, it could be a relationship, but the fear of the future is a loss, and a loss is like any kind of grieving. I don't know why the five stages of grieving um, also can play out on a lot of different things, right? What are the first one is denial. First, in your
Mhm.
denial, you're in shock, disbelief that they portrayed you or they acted this way. You can't believe it, right? You're very emotional. And then the second stage is you get angry. Then you get angry, so you're you can find all the things bad about the person or the situation. You get angry, and then after
Mhm.
that is you start to bargain. That's to negotiate with yourself the loss. How did it
Mhm.
happen?
Mhm.
And then the other one is depression. You get depressed because of the loss. And then the final phase of grieving is this acceptance. You have to accept it. So instead of fighting those emotions, you try to cycle through them as fast as you can. And then, the idea is when it's over, you have more clarity, you have more appreciation for, what the next step is going to be. And
Yeah, yeah. I
that's
think
my definition of
I,
soul
I think
searching.
it's an interesting. I've heard that many times, and I've as you're talking about those cycles, I've reminiscing on having gone through those a few times in my life, and yeah, cycling through them as quickly as possible is definitely the thing. But it was interesting about the forgive or the acceptance piece is it acceptance or is forgiveness necessary? And what I've discovered for me is if I stay focused on forgiveness, that's more difficult for me, particularly in very intense level of betrayal or bad behavior. I think
Mhm.
it's to me, I reconcile that by saying I'm just going to accept this, and if forgiveness comes, then God wants that to happen, and if it doesn't, acceptance is going to be okay because I can move past
Mhm.
this issue right now or this person right now. So
Yeah.
the
Well, it's like anything, it's how you want to frame forgiveness. It may sound like you're doing it for them, like you're going to forgive them so they benefit from it, but you're really doing it for yourself. And it's the same with taking responsibility.
hmm
You're, it's kind of a selfish act, believe it or not. You're not being nice by forgiving them. You're being nice by um, uh, forgiving uh, for taking responsibility for your part of it and then just moving on, putting
yeah,
closure to it and moving on to this next phase in your life, whatever that may be.
moving
Um,
on. Yeah, that's a good piece of advice. The next one is the last one. And I think this is we kind of got into this in the pregame, and it's the dark side of this process of deep introspection. So this last one is this exercise is not just for the bad issues. While it's often used to process negative experiences, it's also a way to understand your good ideas, your passions, and your strengths. In essence,
mm,
deep introspection is about becoming more self aware. It's a process that can be uncomfortable at times, but it's also a powerful way to gain clarity and
mm,
move forward in your life. Yeah,
mm,
the dark stuff is we got into it, we got into it pretty quickly and with relative ease. And I made the statement in the pregame, which I
mm,
think bears repeating, is that's why I think people don't do a lot of this kind of work because of how dark it can
mm,
get and how hard it can be to really look yourself in the
mm,
mirror and be honest with yourself. It's challenging.
mm, mm. When you say dark, what do you mean by dark? Dark as in your
Well, the
darkness
word,
for humanity, darkness for your life, darkness for um, the
well,
trust in others. That's a broad term,
it
darkness.
is. It is. I used a broad term on purpose because I think it has lots of different nuance to it. The word betrayal,
Mhm.
that's a dark word for me,
Yeah.
and I think it is for most of us. And then we talked about trust, we talked about lying, we talked about cheating and stealing, and how
Hmm.
humankind is prone to this behavior. It becomes relative. We can tolerate sometimes a white lie, like if your wife says to you, "What do you think about my new hairdo?" You're gonna fucking lie unless you like it, right? Because that's kind, so it's the relativity of these things is where the nuance is. I think is where it can get you can start to kid yourself, I guess, is another way to say it, if you're not careful.
Hmm. Hmm.
I can anyway.
Yeah. 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 Read that last paragraph, and then we'll kind of wrap this up.
That's the one I just read. You want me to read it again? I will.
Was the essence of deep
Yeah,
introspection?
yeah, yeah.
Okay, that's the one.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
the rest of that definition that your chat GPT produced was the dark stuff, and I think we wanted to touch on that conceptually, but I don't think we wanted to go down that hole as deeply as maybe
Yeah,
we
we
were
got a
thinking.
few minutes though. Let's throw it out there.
Okay.
Is it still in the chat there? Do you see that? Yeah, because like you said, I think it ultimately came back to that. We didn't start with that because we didn't want to frame it as this negative, um, dark place. But I think that's part of the process to work through that. So it comes out the other end with some
Well,
light
we talked.
shedded on it,
Yeah,
and you'll have a little
it's
bit more.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's not in there, so I can't read it. But I remember the
yeah,
concept of it was the how it can be about negative things, how it can be, uh,
yeah,
as I said, dark. It's
yeah.
oh there. Okay, you
Yeah,
popped
I
it
go
up
ahead and read.
again.
We get about 10 minutes or a
Yeah,
little
yeah,
bit less.
yeah.
So I just put it back in there. But yeah, this
Uh,
so to just to put context to this, right? So as I'm going through this process, um, the something came up. We both talked about it. In fact, you even mentioned it about humanity, liars, cheats, and thieves.
mhm,
And self reflection is, hey, look at to be we all do it in our own special, unique ways. It's just part of a human. It's what we do.
we do.
So yeah, go ahead and you can read it. What came back when I prompted
Yeah,
it.
we are all liars, cheats, and thieves. It's powerful to have that kind of self-reflection. When you're looking at yourself and humanity, it's easy to see the negative aspects, the times we've all been less than our best, or the ways people have let us down. It can feel like those moments define everything. What's really at the heart of that feeling for you, is it about specific mistakes you've made, or is it a broader sense of disappointment? Recognizing and wrestling with those parts of ourselves is a sign of deep introspection.
Mm.
Yeah,
I think it's
that's
a good way to wrap it up,
yeah.
without framing it too dark. But that's deep introspections when you can see yourself in that, and then see others and either be forgiving or more understanding We're all.
Yeah, I think as we said before, and maybe that was in the pregame. When I look at this, I think of a few things in my life, but I also think of how helpful it is to have your one of your favorite terms, an agent in this process, and you really have to be vulnerable, and you really have to have somebody you can trust, and
Mhm.
probably love. But if someone else can help with this, I think
Mhm.
that's what I preach in my professional life. It's like you can do this on your own, but it's a lot more fun. It's a lot easier and usually a lot more effective in a quicker period of time when you have the trust of another human to go through it. It's hard, man, looking at yourself in the mirror, especially when you get older.
Yeah, yeah. A trusted advisor there's no question. And sometimes you have friendships that you can do that, but friends aren't always the best people to get perspective on things. They either
No.
know you too well, or they got their own problems in their life that they're going to project on your issues. So, yeah, I do think, like you said, depending on what it is, everybody needs an agent. An agent that sees things from a different lens in terms of your self-worth to the market, if it's a business context, your self-worth as a person, your unique abilities, your secret sauce, and going all in on those and letting the other stuff go because you can't control it. I think we're all trying to do the best we can. And I choose to believe most people have good intentions, at least the
Mhm.
people that I surround myself with. And sometimes, you call it wrong because you didn't know how hurt they were, or maybe you did something that was interpreted differently than you thought. You never know.
Yeah,
What.
yeah, I think that's very helpful. I think the most helpful pieces of this conversation are the fact that self-reflection and deep introspection are really healthy, and we should all probably do a little bit more of that. Just don't allow yourself to wallow in any of it.
Mhm.
And to your point, keep in mind that most of the people we encounter during any given day, they all got their own shit going on, man, and we
Yep.
don't often get to go in and say, where's
Yep.
that coming from? You know,
Mhm.
so a little
Yeah.
bit of compassion and understanding on top of some deep self reflection
Yeah.
is a good formula.
Compassion and sprinkle some humility on there.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that humility is always good, and I think you'll come out at least with a clear understanding of what the next steps are going to be. Moving forward with
Hey, if
whatever that is.
yeah, for anybody who's still here, I want to make sure that I remind everybody we really could use the help on the Apple platform is particularly energetic when you like us and review us and give us a star rating. It really spreads this out into the world and remind people that we also have an Imperfect Men's Club newsletter that sits on the LinkedIn platform. And if you like what you're hearing here, you probably would like what we're writing there as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff, Mark. Until next week.
Thanks, Jim.